Hi all. We had an historic moment today where the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese presented to the public the voice to Parliament, what it would look like, how it would be presented, and the key principles behind the voice that we've all been desperately waiting to hear. Now, I've recorded the whole of Albo's presentation. I've done that for posterity's sake so that I can say that we've got a record of it here because this is an historic moment that we all need to be mindful of. And so I wanted to record it, to keep it, because this is history in the making. And we all need to be aware that what is happening around the voice is the first time in this country that we've acknowledged First Nations people, what they mean to us, their 65,000 plus years of continual culture, and we need to celebrate that. This is an extremely important time for all of us. And as a supporter of the voice, and suggesting that people who watch my videos vote yes if you're in Australia, but I hope that if you live overseas, you just see what we're doing in Australia in relation to this. Now, the interesting part of this was that Albo became extremely emotional as he was presenting this to us, and it bemused me, I guess, to see a strange and weird individual by the name of Prue McSween, who I don't know why I follow her on YouTube. Probably because I do like to criticise her because she's just one hell of a terrible person. But she, after he gave this speech, this is the way she responded to him. And I find this extremely offensive. I just wanted to show this. So this is what she said. Oh my God, our MP, emotional revoiced wording. He is teary because he knows his potential legacy and moment in history is on the line. Now, she is a right-wing crazy individual, and criticise him for being emotional. I think that him being emotional shows the commitment that he has made to ensuring that that First Nations people are recognised rightfully in our Constitution. They have a legacy in this land that no one else has. They're the most longest continuing culture in this country and in the world, so they need to be celebrated. And the voice is a means by which, hopefully, that will happen if we get the yes vote through. So this is the sort of feedback you get from the right in relation to anything that Albanese does, and Prue McSween is just a piece of something or other that we excrete from our bodies. So not too happy with her, but that is the type of sentiment you're going to get back in relation to this very emotional issue. And I found that when I was watching some of these presentations today in regard to the voice, I certainly found myself becoming emotional. And I think that if you do feel that, if you feel that sense of emotion around things that people are saying, then it is important. And it's important to you. And, I know it's important because I know it's important for First Nations people. And I want to ensure that First Nations people have the appropriate voice so they can rectify, that they can work with everybody else to rectify the issues that are paramount in the First Nations communities. So this is it. I'm just going to play the whole thing through and you can make some comments below. And before I do all of that, though, I just want to suggest that if you could subscribe, which I can't bring up now for whatever reason, things just aren't working as they should be. So if you could subscribe to my channel, that would be really, really helpful. So here it is. Here's the voice and the introduction by Albanese. And I'm just going to play it. It's about 34 minutes. Hope you enjoy it.
At this point in such a united fashion. The question that Australians will be asked at this year's referendum is a very simple one. It will read, a proposed law to alter the Constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia by establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. Do you approve this proposed alteration? That's the question. before the Australian people. Nothing more, but nothing less. And the provisions that Australians will be voting to approve are as follows. Chapter 9, Recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. 129, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. In recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of Australia, 1. There shall be a body to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. 2. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice may make representations to the Parliament and the Executive Government of the Commonwealth on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. 3. The Parliament shall, subject to this Constitution, have power to make laws with respect to matters relating to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice, including its composition, functions, powers and procedures. This form of words is legally sound, and it is a form of words that all of us have confidence will gain the strongest possible support from the people of Australia at the referendum and deliver the best possible outcomes in the years ahead. The constitutional provisions we are releasing today enshrine two fundamental principles: recognition and consultation. First, recognition. As Australians, we have an extraordinary privilege. We share this great island continent with the world's oldest continuous culture. Our nation's birth certificate should recognise this and be proud of it. People who have loved and cared for this country for 65,000 years and more. In countless ways, we embrace that as a source of great pride, and we should recognise it. We should recognise it. Secondly, consultation, not a radical notion, a sensible and practical proposition that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people should have a say in the decisions and policies that affect their lives, not just because it's common courtesy and decency to ask people before you take a decision that will have an impact on them, but because when you reach out and listen to communities, you get better results. Consultation through the voice is about strengthening Parliament's understanding, not supplanting its authority. It won't take decision-making power away from government or Parliament, but it will help governments and parliaments make better decisions and achieve better outcomes. And we urgently need better outcomes because it's not good enough where we're at in 2023. On every measure, there is a gap between the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and the national average. A 10-year gap in life expectancy, a suicide rate twice as high, tragic levels of child mortality and disease, a massive overrepresentation in the prison population, in deaths in custody, in children sent to out-of-home care. And this is not because of a shortage of goodwill or good intentions on any side of politics, and it's not because of a lack of funds. It's because governments have spent decades trying to impose solutions from Canberra rather than consulting with communities. I know that every Australian wants to see our nation do better than this, because our nation is better than this. Every Australian wants to know that an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander baby born today will enjoy an equal right to grow up healthy and safe, to get a great education, find a good job, to live a long and happy life. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. Every Australian wants us to close the gap, and today points the way to how we are going to do it. By consulting people on the ground, by working with people who live alongside these challenges, by enshrining a voice in our Constitution, and by listening to that voice. Today, alongside the final form of words for adding to the Constitution, we are providing some important principles that will underpin the shape and function of the voice. These principles have been developed by the Referendum Working Group, and this morning they were adopted by my Cabinet. Firstly, the voice will give independent advice to the Parliament and Government. It will be able to make proactive representations as well as respond to requests. And the Parliament and Executive Government should seek written advice from the voice early in the development of proposed laws and policies. The voice will be chosen by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people based on the wishes of local communities, not appointed by the government. Members will serve for a fixed period of time to ensure accountability. It will be representative of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities with a gender balance and include youth. Members will come from every state and territory, the Torres Strait Islands and specific remote representatives. It will be accountable and it will be transparent, subject to the standard governance and reporting requirements. The voice will work alongside existing organisations and traditional structures, respecting their work. And as been made clear very many times, the voice will not have a veto power and it will not deliver programs or manage funding. It's been nearly 6 years since the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people gathered at Uluru from all points of the southern sky. Galloway Yunupingu said they lit a fire that day, a flame of truth and healing, a bright burning light for us to follow. The Uluru Statement from the Heart and this referendum also presents every Australian with a historic democratic opportunity, a chance to show the very best of our national character, our fundamental optimism, our deep sense of fairness, our instinctive respect and kindness for each other. If not now, when? That is an opportunity that doesn't belong to the politicians. It belongs to every Australian equally. One person, one vote. People from all faiths, backgrounds and traditions. All of us will have an equal say. All of us can own an equal share of what I believe will be an inspiring and unifying Australian moment. I want to take this opportunity to give my sincere thanks to the Referendum Working Group. What an extraordinary job they have done. From time to time, I've been asked by people in this room what my view is on various things. And I've said this isn't about me. I wanted to hear from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people themselves. The process of getting to this point isn't top down, it's bottom up from the people here. And soon the Parliament will debate the final pieces of legislation necessary to facilitate the vote. I thank the Parliament yesterday for unanimously passing through the Senate the legislation for provisions of the vote. We will introduce legislation with this wording next Thursday. We will establish a joint parliamentary committee which will have time to consider any submissions which are made, and then we will put that to a vote in June. To be very clear, because I was asked this question this morning, are there any circumstances in which this will not be put to a vote? The answer to that is no. Because to not put this to a vote to not put this to a vote is to concede defeat. You only win when you run on the field and engage. And let me tell you, my government is engaged. We're all in. Ultimately, though, there will be differences of opinion. And I respect people's right to have a different opinion and to say no. That is their democratic right. But I would ask for there to be a debate based upon the facts, not based upon scare campaigns which have no basis, not based upon nonsense, and not based upon issues that aren't respectful. The people who stand with me on this stage, I regard as a great privilege to be standing with the giants of Australia. I don't know if I had their experience in life that I could be as generous and as modest in my request. I would like to think that I would be, but you can't stand in other people's shoes. This is a modest request. I say to Australia, don't miss it. Don't miss it. This is a real opportunity to take up the generous invitation of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. This is about the heart, but it's also about the head. If you think things have been working up to now, look at the Closing the Gap issue. If you want to look at the best programs for Indigenous Australians that have been successful, they have all been characterised by having that sense of ownership. They're the things that have worked. They're the things that will work in the future. This is not about symbolism. This is about recognition, something that's far more important. But it's also about making a practical difference, which we have a responsibility to do. You're going to hear from a number of people now. Megan Davis, Thomas Mayer, Patrick Dodson, Tony McAvoy, Linda Burney, and then we'll take questions. Megan.
Thank you, Prime Minister. This is a historic day. This is a historic agreement. There is still a long way to go, but today we must pause and reflect on this historic achievement. When we ran the dialogues all over Australia, our people spoke about not being listened to and not being heard. They spoke about powerlessness and voicelessness. This Prime Minister, this government has listened respectfully, genuinely, authentically. This process bodes well for the future of the voice. Almost 6 years ago, we issued the Uluru Statement from the Heart to the Australian people. And we asked Australians to read it, and we asked them to hear our call. That retail Australian politics, political tribalism, means that things never change in our communities. And the Constitution is something that we have never tried. We have never tried in this country to empower our people, to empower our voice. This is about the right to be consulted on laws and policies that are made about our communities, to be heard on laws and policies about our lives. 6 to 7 years ago, we ran 12 constitutional dialogues and a national constitutional convention, and we said that a protected voice, an enshrined voice to the Parliament, is what we think is meaningful constitutional recognition. It is symbolic recognition and substantive recognition. I think it was 12 years ago when the first expert panel was set up, and many of my colleagues were involved in that. But prior to that, 3 decades of advocacy for constitutional recognition, and I acknowledge the work of Patrick Dodson, Linda Burney, Marcia Langton, and many here who have contributed to this journey. Since that expert panel, we have had 7 mechanisms and 10 reports, all on the public record, all published, all transparent, this is the second decade of constitutional recognition, and thanks to the leadership of our Prime Minister, we are now going to a referendum. There's been a lot of work that has gone into this, a lot of work from Australians across the political spectrum, First Nations and Australians working together. So this is the culmination of many, many decades of hard work. It's the culmination of the Referendum Council's work and the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and the many men and women who contributed to that dialogue, some of who are in this room today. We implore all Australians to unite behind us and walk with us in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. Thomas Mayer.
You've heard about the incredibly hard work we've been doing as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. This is the culmination of generations of work. At Uluru, we gathered with an eye to the lessons from the past, and we looked to the future. We suspended our disbelief that this nation would listen to us. We chose hope for a better future. We must have hope. We must believe in ourselves. We must do better. It's not good enough that here in this country the life expectancy of Indigenous peoples is almost 10 years less than other Australians. It's not good enough that proportionately we are the most incarcerated people on the planet. It's not good enough that our youth languish in detention in obscene numbers. They should be our hope for the future. It's time for us to have a voice. Today we've delivered on another major piece of work on this trek to a better future. We have a set of words, a new chapter 9, that does something simple and profound. In its simplicity, it is giving Indigenous people who have been ignored and treated poorly for far too long a voice so that we may improve our lives. It is profound because it includes over 60,000 years of continuous heritage and culture in our Constitution, a recognition from that the moment we say yes, we are collectively, as an Australian nation, the longest continuing civilisation on the planet. The Constitution Alteration Bill goes to Parliament next week. Indigenous people will be watching. We want this to be above politics. We are tired of having our lives used as a political football. We want all Australians to hear us, not just in rare moments like this, but any time decisions are made about us. We want you to believe in yourselves, believe in us walking together, believe we can do better. We want the Australian people to vote yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. Patrick Dodson.
Thank you. The words that ring in my head from the Uluru Statement is the tyranny of our dispossession. And today is a clear example where the government and the Aboriginal leadership here have laid the foundation to actually give hope, to the reversing of that tyranny, because a successful referendum will give the Aboriginal peoples a voice to the Parliament and to the Executive on matters that affect them. This requires all Australians. We need your help, all Australians, to see the significance at this moment, with this level of unity here, this level of magnanimity, this level of dedication that has taken place amongst us and the government, that we as Australians can arise to a better relationship with our First Peoples. One where we are liberated and when our hearts and minds are cleaned from the tyranny of the oppression and suffering and shame that we've lived with. The working group has worked on design principles. The Prime Minister has outlined some of those. And I want to throw to Mr. Tony McAvoy to speak a bit about that, because it's not easy to cover every detail in a process where you're focused on principle. A principle for the Australian people to vote on, to put in our Constitution a set of words that clearly gives recognition to the Aboriginal peoples and gives them a voice to the Parliament and the Executive. I'll ask Mr. McAvoy to comment on those matters.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has already outlined to you a set of principles which will be released today with Cabinet approval. I will reiterate those 9 principles, but underlying those 9 principles is an expansion which we hope will go a long way to eradicating the fears that some people might have about this voice. The design principles are: following the design principles of the Voice to Parliament agreed by the First Nations Referendum Working Group, A, the Voice will give independent advice to the Parliament and Government. B, it will be chosen by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people based on the wishes of local communities. C, it will be representative of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, gender balanced and include youth. D, it will be empowering, community-led, inclusive, respectful and culturally informed. E, it will be accountable and transparent. F, it will work alongside existing organisations and traditional structures. G, it will not have a program delivery function. And H, it will not have a veto power. The Referendum Working Group encourages everybody that has an interest in this process to pay close attention to the design principles. This is how we set out where the voice should go. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tony. Linda Burney.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Today is a truly historic day. Today we take a big step forward on the long journey to constitutional recognition through voice. Last night, the referendum machinery bill passed the Senate with bipartisan support. Constitutional recognition should be above politics. Recognising Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the Constitution will be a simple but powerful act. It will move Australia forward for everyone. It will give all Australians the chance to come together to recognise and celebrate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture and story. It will give our people a say in the matters that affect us so we can make better policies. I want to thank all the members of the Referendum Working Group for their wisdom, their dedication and getting this right. And I want to thank the Prime Minister for staying the course and being such a strong leader. This has been a rigorous and comprehensive process. Australians can be confident that the work has been done to ensure this is a voice that works. A voice that works. A voice that will make practical difference. a voice that will work for you. And so today, the starter's gun has been fired. Let us get on with the campaign to deliver a yes vote in this Constitution to be held later this year.
Thanks very much, Linda. And I do want...
So we'll just leave it at that. But I just want people to understand that this is history in the making and we are a part of it. I was reflecting back to 1967 when I was 16 years old, and it was in 67 that we decided to have a referendum on giving First Nations people the vote. It doesn't seem all that long ago for me, it was in my lifetime, and we now have another opportunity to give Indigenous people more than just a vote, but to be recognised in our Constitution for the rights they deserve, given that they were here long before us white people were. And it is important, I think, to understand the significance of this moment and for all of us to vote yes when it comes to the referendum later this year. Thanks for being with me, everybody. Take care, look after yourselves, and be safe.